Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the Musical QuaranStream.
I am Glenn,
I am Bri.
and we're very happy to be back with you here on Saturday. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are two people who love musicals.
Yes.
And during the whole quarantine for COVID-19, starting around the middle of March or so,
Yeah, like St. Patrick's Day-ish.
yeah, we decided that, since we can't get out and meet all of our friends and family and everybody we want to be with, we would start doing this stream about twice every week or so.
Yep.
Every now and then we do another, third special event, but I think it's been well over a month since we did one of those.
Yeah, we've only done one special event.
Yeah. So we get together and we discuss what's going on, what we've enjoyed the past week, what is going on in the world, and we discuss musical theater. And lately, we have
Pitching musical theater and social justice.
Yes. So we've been talking about musical theater and social justice, and we've been pitching our ideas for adaptations that we would like to do, where we're like, hey, if I had the rights to do a musical based on this, then I would do blah, 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 blah. So, and let's see. So,
go watch Midsummer Stream from the
Yes.
National Theater on YouTube. It's really good. It's 2.5 hours, but it'll fly by. You'll love it.
yes. Midsummer Night's Dream is, I guess that's the classic favorite Shakespeare play.
And it's Midsummer, so.
And this is a phenomenal production of it. Great performances. Some really great tweaks to the story that are not out of character for a Shakespeare play, but you don't usually see those things done in a production of Midsummer.
Well, what I think is so funny is they do use a lot of circus and magic stuff. And way earlier on, we saw a production of the Folger Theatre with the Scottish play that was directed by Teller, and had obviously a lot of circus things and magic stuff. So it's really kind of neat to see kind of like those two contrasting pieces. And then I know Glenn was really hit by kind of a director's kind of choice with some characters, and we've been talking about it ever since we watched it. So we've really liked it.
It is, if you are home and you're experiencing live theater through the computer, all of the different shows that theater companies are putting out there, definitely don't miss the Midsummer Night's Dream from National
And it's
Theater.
usually only up for about a week because they are fundraisers. Theater everywhere is having a hard time right now. Like, let's just be honest about that. But they are doing fundraisers in the UK because they are also having a really hard time.
Yeah.
So they try to leave up each show for about a week, but then once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. So get to their page now. Watch the play. It's phenomenal. It should not be missed. And if you can make a donation to help out theater in England, right now they've actually lost a couple of the biggest professional theaters have announced that they are not reopening after the quarantine is over, after the social distancing is over. So,
or your favorite theater here, because they're probably, even if you haven't heard from them, they probably aren't doing too well either.
Yeah.
Or your favorite, theater professors.
Yeah.
People who are here kind of bringing you kind of our expertise on theater. Of course, we have our little, ticker running right below that if you'd like to buy us, a coffee or, help keep the lights on, quite literally.
Yes.
We would always love a donation or spread the word about our show.
Yeah. And hi, Jenny. We see you in the chat room there. Nice to see you back with us. But yes, Midsummer Night's Dream. It's on YouTube right now, free to watch from the National Theater. Definitely check that out. Of course, we've been watching lots more YouTubers and things like that. We just discovered Pushing Up Roses.
Really good. She talks a lot about Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, that's her.
And the Golden Girls, which, are our comfort food right around this time.
Yeah, she does a lot of movie and television commentaries, and I think it is genuinely like her newest series is That Time on Murder, She Wrote, where she covers some of the more bizarre, outlandish episodes from Murder, She Wrote, which had 12 seasons. So it had plenty of opportunities to have just absolutely insane episodes. So that one's been a lot of fun to check out. We're still painting and fixing up the apartment.
Well, it takes a long time because we're both working. You more part-time, and then like part-time in your personal stuff, and I'm back at full-time and have a lot of deadlines to kind of meet here in the near future. We do have 4th of July coming up, which is one of the things we kind of wanted to pitch to our audience. So if you watch this on YouTube or if you watch this here on Twitch right now, please let us know if you'd like to see something on 4th of July.
Yeah.
We can kind of keep going with our standard format. Or we can maybe do a celebration of things like 1776 and Hamilton and kind of like those American type of musicals. Or we can give you the time off. Yeah. I just know that, you know, many states, unfortunately, are having a resurgence. We are not really seeing the curve go down as far as COVID cases, new COVID cases, and infections. So I feel like for me, it's probably unlikely that, you know, people are going out to spend time with their families, are going to go see things like fireworks or stuff like that. So we're happy to provide, you know, a respite next Saturday where y'all can tune in and we can kind of tailor our content or just kind of keep pitching ideas. Or if you, you know, are very lucky and you have places to go and things to do, you know, obviously we want to try to accommodate folks when they want to see it. Obviously, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you can watch this anytime you want. So it's not necessarily more of a requirement for you. I think it's more folks out there in Twitch land that if you want us to come next weekend, we can do it. We'll be here. We're not going anywhere. But if you happen to be somewhere else, you know, we're performers. We like to play to at least a house of one. We don't have to have a full house, but we would like to, you know, share some time with folks out there.
Yes. Each of us has, on our own and working together, done shows where the people on stage outnumbered the people in the audience. You still give them a good show. Okay. And anything else, or do we want to get right into the pitch?
I don't really have anything else. I've been doing arts and crafts, so gosh, if you want something painted or something tiled, I am your girl. I've been trying to. Well, let me kind of talk about. I've been really open about kind of my therapy journey. One of the things I think that has been really helpful for me is, number one, like, it sounds weird, but I'm really appreciative everything happened during a pandemic, because I think it's actually very easy for me on video chat and on phone to talk to people. But sometimes, like, it feels very personal when somebody's here. If somebody's in the room with you, it's a little bit more embarrassing to share things. It's harder to have awkward conversations. And so, like, I'm really happy that I've had the opportunity to share some of the most traumatic parts of my childhood and my history with somebody across, like, Zoom. So if you were thinking about therapy, I think, like, for me, it's been a big plus. I don't know if I would have been as candid as quickly being in the same room with somebody who I just met, but I think that it's been really helpful, and I think also just trying to use this time as, like, self-improvement. The other thing, whenever I feel anxious, which is often, because this is a very anxiety-producing time, I've tried to find things I can do around the house. Which there is a lot. So that's kind of the good thing about moving in the middle of the pandemic. It was not great moving during the pandemic, but we had a great moving company and we were able to disinfect anything. But we have so many projects here. Like, you would not think 900 square feet is a lot, but there is so much storage and so much, you know, little renovations and little things to kind of, like, zhuzh things up a little bit. Like, I am determined, because we have such little space in the condo, that I want to have a nice deck. So I've gotten pillows, and I've gotten, like, this rug, and I've got it all on sale. Like, World Market was having a great sale. I got lights, and I'm just trying to, like, make things very, very homey, because it's been nice to have a tactile experience to take me away from being anxious. It's a lot harder if I'm, like, lying down at night. Normally, I try to find, like, I use YouTube again. I try to find old videos that I really liked as a little kid, or I try to find, like, media that I think is really calming. But I kind of joke, but I was like, I can kind of see, like, when you're an inpatient program, you do a lot of arts and crafts. Because if you're drawing, or if you're gluing, or if you're doing stuff, you can't really sit there and be anxious. You can't really sit there and, like, pick your hair, bite your nails or something. You get to just kind of be in the moment and breathe and focus on a nice little repetitive task. And I found that being very calming. I think the only thing that I'm a little bit stressed out about is things cost money.
Yes.
So, like, there's been several times where I can't necessarily have a project or do something, but, when I get some money to do it, that's usually been the first thing I invest in is buying more paint or buying more glue, and then I kind of find another thing to fix up because I have the time to do it. And it's also been really great I have a lot of repetitive tasks in my work, but it involves high-level judgment skills and stuff like that. So kind of being able to take a break from spreadsheets and then, painting something has been really nice as well.
Yeah. And I see Jenny comments that she's right there with you on crafting. Helps her a lot, too. For me, I have always had a problem with, I suffer from anxiety as well, and I have the problem that I come from a background of so many things where, how do you monetize this? Yeah, you're doing that, but how are you going to make money with it? That anytime I try crafting, it inevitably becomes something that's like, I've got to get really good at this so then I can sell it and make money, and then it turns into yet another source of anxiety for me.
Yeah.
So,
and I've talked about that a lot. Like, I think, like, the most common things that I've talked about so far, and I feel comfortable sharing this with everybody, is I don't like horror movies. And we talk about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is people have an inherent self-worth. And too many people tie their self-worth to their careers. And, we talked about it happening a lot with doctors. And that was one of the things that I have realized, too, with the monetization and trying to, do something you love, but then make a living with it, is if you are unsuccessful at it, it tends to be tied up in a lot of how you feel about yourself. And so it's really critical to know that you're still kind and that you're still creative and that you still have a lot of wonderful things that have nothing to do with your production or your output or things that you can give to other people. And I think that is really hard.
Yeah. And another YouTuber that we've both come to really like lately, Chloe Rose. Her channel is Chloe Rose Art. She does a lot of painting and drawing and trying out different art supplies. She's starting to do crafting on her channel, which she talks a lot about. Her crafting skills are very, very rock bottom, but she's trying to get better. And we watched a video with her recently where it was her and another YouTube artist, and she had 30 minutes to recreate a painting that the other YouTube artist had done. And at the end, when the other YouTube artist was like, wow, you did a really good job, Chloe Rose started going about, oh no, I didn't get the detail down here, and I didn't get the sense of movement up here, and I didn't get... And the other YouTuber, I think Banana Jamma is her YouTube name, was just like, no. Say something nice about yourself and what you did. And I feel like that is going to become my mantra now, is say something nice about yourself and what you did. Because I tend to get into a lot of that sort of,
So we highly, highly encourage, if you've been ever thinking about reaching out to somebody, it has been such a load off of my mind because I always feel like my anxiety is also provoked by asking people I love to help talk me through stuff. Be it that I get these sessions for free through my job, I'm really fortunate, but I was like, oh, they're paid either way if I'm talking with them or not. They can be talking to anybody. So I might as well take advantage of this, and because they're being paid, I don't have the same anxiety with coming to them and be like, hey, can we talk about me for an hour and a half?
It's genuinely a professional whose job is to let you talk to them for an hour and a half.
Yeah, where it's like you want a lot of your personal relationships to be reciprocal. You want to be able to kind of have give and take. And so it kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to not have that anxiety because that's what that person went to school for. That's what they're hired for. That's what they're making their money for. So you don't feel as bad being like, oh, well, I hate to impose. Now, the only time I still feel bad is when it's the end of the session and I'm like, I want to talk about one more thing, but I'll do it in 5 minutes.
Well, and I just want to throw in there as well, since you talked about setting up a space outside and sort of the nice one of the things that's going in that space that I'm very excited about is we're starting a little tiny medicinal herb garden.
Yeah, we bought the seeds.
Yeah.
We had so many problems buying those seeds, but we have them. They are here.
Yeah, and that is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, that I've wanted to like start a little herb garden sort of thing. And we're like, well, we have some space out there, not a whole lot of space, but some. We can set out some planters and we can actually get some of this going. And it's going to be fun. I'm going to have a hard time, I understand, keeping the peppermint from taking over everything else in the garden. But I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about getting a chance to work on
it. My mom keeps being like, well, you only have a 6 foot by 10 foot balcony. What are you putting on it? But, you know, we have all the railings, and I thought having, like, railing planters, and, you know, I work in clinical settings, so I have all of these, like, styrofoam boxes that we're going to turn into planters, and we have a couple of, like, stools out there that we can kind of elevate light and, you know, shift some stuff around, and we still have like we have a little table, we have little chairs. We're going to put out a little bird feeder, but we're using all the vertical space as well as the horizontal space. And I think, like, for me, I'm already noticing, like, wasps are out there. So I'm like, nope, we are inviting in the birds, we are inviting in these plants, we're going to try to navigate everything as best we can. But we're going to try to take advantage of having a deck space. Mm-hmm. And I think the only thing that we talked about is I was like, I'd love to screen it in because the cats are so jealous. They just discovered that that's where sunbeams come from. And so they want to be outside, and they're indoor cats. And, you know, I don't feel comfortable, be it that we're not on the ground level, that they would be smart enough or safe enough to not hurt themselves. So
yes, and Lola has just gotten offended by that and is walking away.
So kitty, stay inside, but, you know, I figured at least for, you know, when we want to eat outside, our friends and family come over, we wanted to have a nice space with some nice ambient lighting and some, you know, healthy plants that we use for cooking, and, you know, a little spot for hummingbirds or birds or stuff like that. And I think we can kind of make it all happen.
Yeah.
I was like, I appreciate my mom's concerns, but I was like, I think I want it cozy.
Yeah.
And I think it'll work out.
Yeah, I think it will too. So I feel like that's really good for what's been going on this week.
Yeah, we like to take about the first 15, 20 minutes to talk about recap, what's going on.
Yeah, and that was good, solid 17 minutes.
There we go.
All right, we're getting this down. We're getting the format in place. It's becoming instinctive. Must be about time for, like, everybody to have to go back out, huh?
Oh, I hope not.
Stay home if you can.
We, just take it 2 seconds. We went out to Lowe's and we're like, no. I told Glenn on Friday, you know, it was, I got a baby paycheck. It wasn't enough to really, like, pay anything, but it was enough to kind of, like, get some stuff to fix up the house. And so we went out, and I said, let's just, like, go out all in one day. Like, I don't want to go out ever again. And we got to Lowe's, and we're like, we're done. We're going to just self-quarantine for another 14 days.
Yes, yes.
So it's. I hope everything's getting better. I hope we're all getting there. I hope there's no more of this, like, scary bit of exposure and stuff like that. Like, I really, I miss having kind of a routine and being around a lot of other people, but still I feel like things are so stressful and so dangerous, and people are still really unsure. There's not really a guiding feature about how to proceed, and I think some people are kind of taking their anxieties in a very negative place, and it's just really sad. But it was like, I think, like, for me, I can't control everybody else's behaviors, but I can control my behaviors, and so that might mean staying at home or going to work in my office by myself. You know, it's like I don't think that I feel as safe shopping as I'd like to feel this late in the pandemic, but that's where we are.
Yes. So let's see, in our pitches, we just started on books.
Yes.
And last time we were all together here, Bri pitched her idea for adapting the Faith McNulty children's book, Artie the Smarty, to a musical. And I think very, very good sounding musical. I think a lot of the stuff we talked about, it's like, I would definitely watch that musical. For my book, I wanted to do something similar this Saturday to what Bri had done with bringing one of her favorite books from her childhood and turning it into a musical. So, for me, I am one of those kids who grew up reading mystery novels that were written for young adults. And, of course, being a young boy, I was supposed to be reading The Hardy Boys. That's the series for boys. I read Nancy Drew. I loved Nancy Drew. Those were the stories that I clinged to. Because
I thought they were more interesting as well.
Yeah.
Like, I tried to read both, and Nancy Drew I just thought was more engaging.
Nothing wrong with the Hardy Boys, but the Hardy Boys typically were focused not just on mystery, but on sort of the young men's adventure genre as well.
I always felt they were, like, half smart and half goofy.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you just wanted to be Nancy Drew. She was just so clever and popular.
But I always say, like, the Hardy Boys, you know, when you looked at the context of their mysteries, a lot of times the Hardy Boys were camping out in the wild, or they were climbing a mountain, or they were on a boat, or something like that. It was always very much like, what do you do with the Boy Scouts? That's what the Hardy Boys do. And Nancy Drew was always, in the books that I read, the series that I read, Nancy Drew was always going to New York City, seeing a show, going shopping, spending a week at like an arts festival or something like that. And I'm like, this is the stuff that I like to do.
Like I felt like it was much more centered around like, it was much more Scooby-Doo, I guess.
Yeah.
Going to my uncle's old house,
Yes.
or, you know, going to the fair. Like, it was much more of a Scooby-Doo procedural in the style of where Nancy Drew would show up.
Yeah. And now, I think part of my image of Nancy Drew as that sort of like urban adventurer comes from the fact that Nancy Drew has had 1 million adaptations and reboots. And the time...
Including, isn't there one now on CW or something?
Yes, the CW has one going now. And every time, it's pretty much a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Like, they start from, here's Nancy, here's George, here's Ned.
Yeah.
And Nancy's father is somewhere in here, too, but you're not going to see him for most of the story. But you have, of course, you have the original books. You have the 1970s TV series, which was split with the Hardy Boys. There was a series in the late 80s for television. There were movies in the 1930s, movies in the 1990s. There's a new series of movies. It's only 2 movies long, but and most people don't realize the second one is actually a sequel.
Yeah, I kind of always joked, like, if I had the opportunity to reboot, I would do, like, NYC Drew. And have her just be, like, in New York City and be trendy and, you know, all that, the sexy teen murder high school stuff.
Teenage Sex in the City meets Murder, She Wrote.
Right.
Yeah. But the Nancy Drew that I was most familiar with was split across 2 different series of books that in the late 80s, late 80s would have been about right. There was the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys Super Mysteries, which were nice, big, thick books that had both the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew find themselves in some place together and they work on a case. And I kind of liked those because I always felt like Nancy got to be like the serious detective, while the Hardy Boys were kind of like the muscle. And the storylines tended to focus more on the things that I liked of Nancy Drew. And then the other series was the Nancy Drew Files, which the Nancy Drew Files was one of the reboots in book form of Nancy Drew that basically took her around to all of these big cities, things like she meets a rock star who's on a world tour, things like that. And also her mysteries were more like The Man Who Knew Too Much, where she would get like swept up in international espionage and things like that. So I have, my image of Nancy Drew is very much like daring, adventurous, dangerous, and enjoying life. Like enjoying all of the benefits of, hey, we're in London for a week, we're in New York for a week, that sort of thing. That's my Nancy Drew, is the globe-trotting, constantly in danger, the car is about to blow up, Nancy Drew. And when I first started thinking about this, which was about, we set this list, almost a month ago now, right?
Yeah, I was like, it's really disturbing that we try to go through this, like, and predict maybe a month or 2 or 3 months, and we always run to the end and we're like, oh no! We have to think of something else.
So about a month ago, I started thinking about Nancy Drew in addition to everything else that I was going to be pitching. And I started going, well, what do I want to do with Nancy Drew? Because I was like, I could go and dig up some of the Nancy Drew files and do, I'm adapting the version of Nancy Drew that I grew up with. Or I could say, I'm going to go dig up some of the original Nancy Drew, go back to the source material and adapt that. Maybe the 1930s Nancy Drew reporter movie that was made. What am I going to do? Do I want to try to cram multiple versions of Nancy Drew into a show? And finally, what I arrived at was, I was like, no. If I am going to do an adaptation of Nancy Drew to musical theater, I'm going to do what people do every time they do a new adaptation or reboot of Nancy Drew. And start from, we have Nancy, we have George, we have Ned. And rewrite everything else that I want to do with it.
Oh, there you go.
All right? So my version of Nancy Drew is Sleuth has her best friend and her kinda sorta boyfriend, kinda sorta just that guy who's there all the time. And then I create my own setting, create my own story, create my own sort of sense of who is Nancy Drew and what is her world.
Okay.
All right? So what I've got is, here's my idea. You have Nancy Drew is a student at a prestigious academy where she is a scholarship student. So her dad is upper middle class. She can afford to be at this school and go on all these big field trips and everything because she has a scholarship that helps her out with it. All right? So beginning of the show, begin with sort of like, you have your opening song. Gotta have your opening song. My vision for the music of this is, I have a long-standing love of girl punk. So I think of the music for this show, I think of the Donnas, I think of Shonen Knife, I think of the Josie and the Pussycats movie from the 90s. I think of that, girl rock, girl empowerment with, crunching guitars behind it sort of thing.
There you go.
And I was like, okay, I want to undercut the most obvious thing that guys do when they're writing a story about a female protagonist with my opening song. All right? All
right, I'm ready.
Opening song, I want to undercut this. So we have the song begins very simple with, the sort of, it's one of those punk songs that starts off with the very, very, kind of guitar line under the voice. All right, and you've got, it's a typical sort of first verse for a Broadway show. I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I comb my hair, I get ready to go to school and everything. And of course, the big crunching guitar and everything comes in as you go into the chorus for the first time. And the chorus to the song is, I'm just like all the other girls. I want a life of fame and adventure. And that's the song. The song is about how Nancy Drew is this big adventurer already. And she does all of these cool things, just like all the other girls.
You know what this makes me think of is we listened to about a year ago, 2 years ago, was the musical Daddy Longlegs. Where she had that song, you know, I am in a foreign world.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I am different, I am strange.
But this is a non-ironic. This is genuinely like, I am. You know, every girl wants this, because I feel like that's the thing about Nancy Drew. Mm-hmm. Like you said, every girl wants to be Nancy Drew. She is essentially the literary equivalent of the what was the song? Well, she is the character who every girl sees herself in. Yeah. Regardless of who they are, regardless of what their background is. You know, if they're a member of the chess club, if they're a cheerleader, if they're in the chorus, if they're whatever they are, whatever group they belong to in school and everything, Nancy Drew is still them. And that's, the song is essentially Nancy Drew is, like all the other girls, what she wants in her life is to kick ass and take names.
All right.
All right. So, and you get this introduction to the character, and you get the introduction to the other characters. You have Ned. I don't want to play up the romance with Ned all that much in this.
Poor Ned.
I kind of want Ned to just be a guy who's like, hey, my best bud Nancy, and her being like, yeah, best buds, friend power forever, and absolutely nothing about, oh, I had this horrible crush on you, sort of thing.
Aww.
They're good friends.
I know, but I just think that it would be so funny to just be like, yeah, best buds, yeah, best buds, yeah, best buds, yeah, best buds.
You know what? That's a potential performance choice. If Ned wants to play lovesick about Nancy, he totally can.
Well, maybe Ned wants to be like all the other girls, too.
Yes.
Like the end of Twisted, where everybody can be a princess.
Yes. Yes.
There's nothing inherently gendered about being a princess. You just want to be able to rule the kingdom, okay?
Yeah. So you meet Ned on the way to school. They're going to school together. And then she gets to school and you meet George. And George as a little kid, I kind of had a crush on George in the books. Because George was like the jock girl.
And you're like, Nancy's too cool for me.
Yeah. Nancy was awesome. Nancy was great. But I liked George, who was always like there and ready to like throw down in a fight.
Well, I mean, you also like, Kaylee from Firefly, so you like the engineer, the kind of like girl who gets her hands dirty.
The costume designer.
No, stop.
But, so in my version, what you have is George is the girl who is like running 1,000,000 miles a minute, trying to get all of her extracurriculars in a row so she can get into a great college. So yeah, she's a member of the women's lacrosse team. She's the editor of the school paper, the editor of the yearbook. She's going nuts, and Nancy Drew is her best friend and works as a reporter for the school paper. And George is like trying to get her to be like, hey, we've got the game on Saturday, can you cover the game for me? Actually, you know what I heard? I heard there's a disused set of tunnels underneath the campus. And I was thinking, maybe this weekend I could come on campus after hours and check out a few places where I've heard you can get into these tunnels. Nancy, there's a basketball game. Can you cover the girls' basketball game? Like, I love you, but I can't publish another crazy adventure all the time. Please, just the basketball game.
And so then at the end, it turns out that the tunnels and the basketball game are all the same.
Well, the basketball game and the tunnels would kind of collide at some point. But yes, so, but you would have like plenty of dialogue between Nancy and George where you get the idea that this is not an origin story. This is not Nancy's first big adventure. They've had big adventures together before. And you have George being like, Nancy, can you just focus on, this is like that time that you taught me how to pick handcuffs. And Nancy is like, that's an important skill. You go to a lot of protests, right?
Well, you know what I think this is really funny is I feel like this is, and I'm not saying anything bad about this show, but I just had different expectations.
Yeah.
Was Freaky Friday. When Freaky Friday came out, and I think that, I don't know, my thought was, is I thought they were going to do like the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay Lohan one as the update. And it kind of was, but it wasn't that, like, the fun element you got from stuff like Legally Blonde or Bring It On or stuff like that. Like, you expected the pop punk to be in the Freaky Friday, and I don't think it was.
I don't remember it being it.
So I feel like this is kind of the show, like, yeah, if I could have taken what I wanted that soundtrack to be.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what we have is we had that set up, but please cover the basketball game. And we have a few more things set up to sort of, you know, we go through a little bit extra of the day. You see what kind of the world is. And you see, one of the things I would want to establish is it's a high school. There's always high school politics. There's always the cliques. There's always the in crowd and the out crowd. And Nancy is one of those people who, if you don't love her, you also don't hate her. So, like, she's one of those people who is, like, just sort of, like, flawlessly negotiated the politics of the whole thing. That the groups that would typically be, like, inimical to another group that she identifies with and everything are the group who is, like, you know, is like, no, she's cool. She helped us out that one time with the guy in the thing.
There has to be one person that hates her, though.
Well,
just because there's always, like, one person that's like, you've done nothing wrong, but they still hate you. Just because, like, you are liked by everybody else.
And you know who it is? The history teacher. The American history teacher hates Nancy Drew. And we can have a scene in the classroom with sort of this back and forth song between the two of them, where he's talking about, no, this is the way history has been taught for so long. And she's like, well, what about this? And what about this? And he's like, no, this is the way. If you want an A in my class, you will learn to say this. You know?
Well, I feel like there's always, like, I mean, personal backstory time. One time, I turned in this wonderful project where I met the whole prompt, but then I did more than what was required because I was that type of student. I wanted not extra credit, but just an ability to show what I could do. For my work was basically a communication channel with my teacher to be like, look, I was paying attention, but I also read this and this and this, and I put it all together, and it was amazing. And I literally, like, got, like, not like a C, I got like a B on the paper. And the reason why I got like a B was they said, this was not what I asked you to do. You went above and beyond, and that should be punished. You need to do only what was requested. And I was heartbroken.
All right, let me throw this at you. What you got, the conflict in their class. She turned in a paper and got it back, and it had an F on it. And it had an F because she actually went and found the person from history's journals, read them, and discovered an interpretation of their place in history that had never been seen before, turned it in, and the world history teacher is just like, well, that blows my thesis out. Everything that I built my entire academic career on is now out the window. Thank you so much, F. All right? So, yeah, you get the sense of she's got that friction there. So then you have her going to the basketball game. This is my second musical that's had a basketball game in it. Going to the basketball game, she's covering...
But this time it is a girls' basketball game.
It is a girls' basketball game.
The Absent-Minded Professor, it was a...
No, it was a boys' basketball game and the Absent-Minded Professor. So, girls' basketball game, she goes to the basketball game and she's like, you know what, yeah, I'd rather be doing my thing, but I'm a good friend. George has helped me out so many times. I'm going to help George out. If she needs a story on the basketball game, I'll do a story on the basketball game. But while the basketball game is going on, she notices the world history teacher sneaking out of the game.
Do we think yes.
Yes.
Even Lola had something to say about that.
Yes, Lola is now, you can tell, 100% invested in this story. So she's like, what is the world history teacher up to? And she follows the world history teacher and discovers that the world history teacher is going down into the disused tunnels below the school. And he's going down there because he has connected with a smuggling ring that is bringing in contraband.
Well, you have to have a new thesis.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, here's the thing. The connection between world history, academics, and the smuggling ring is he discovered that in old times, these tunnels were actually built by Captain Kidd.
Oh, man.
Who would smuggle goods into the country through these tunnels. So you have the history professor discovered these old tunnels, made connections with criminals to actually bring things in, and all of this. So you have, like, again, international smuggling ring sort of adventure sort of thing going on with that. So then what you have is you have, I feel, a very Nancy Drew / Hardy Boys sort of story to follow that, of her trying to get people to be like, hey, tunnels. The history teacher is doing something in the tunnels. Let's all go see what the history teacher is doing in the tunnels.
Nancy, you're just mad because he failed you.
Yes, and being like, Nancy, you can't just go off the rails every time someone gives you an F.
And then to be like, I got a lot of Fs.
That being like, yeah, you know, as long as your grades are high enough to stay on the lacrosse team, who really cares?
I feel like Ned is just like, my dad already got me into a good college. It's fine.
Yes. So, so we build up and we build up and we build up with the teacher starting to suspect that Nancy knows something. Because do you really think Nancy Drew is going to be the kind of person to just sit quietly in his class and not let on that, you know, not hint that, hey, I know you're up to something shady?
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling like she would definitely be the type of person that would like raise her hand and be like, well, I have a question about Captain Kidd.
Yes. Like, what do you know about the practices of smuggling during the height of piracy? Do you think?
No, she would say something that would be like, well, it is a well-known fact that pirates used smuggling routes that were tunnels that were underneath some very important buildings. You know, buildings that, you know, could be a school now, but at the time, you know.
Many people speculate that some of our great historical structures, like, oh, this one we're sitting in right now, may actually have been built on criminal hideaways. All right.
How do you like being part of a den of iniquity, Mr. Harris? I don't know, the history teacher. I don't know his name. I'm making it up.
Mr. Harris is
Glen,
as good as
Glen hasn't shared any of this with me prior to today. We're all learning this together.
Yes, because that's the way we do this show.
Lola, you're getting a lot of screen time.
Yes, she is. She's definitely very involved in this episode. So
we need to get a little handle for Lola so you guys can tweet at Lola and she'll have one right in the middle.
So what you have is finding clues, trying to gather evidence on the teacher, and finally culminating in Nancy going to George and Ned and being like, guys, nobody will believe me unless I just flat out show them. I figured this out. I've got the papers and everything that you guys helped me gather and everything like this. There is another shipment coming in this weekend. Like, and again, it can be like this weekend is like the big basketball game against the rival team, you know. So everybody's going to be at that game. It's the perfect cover for him to go down into the tunnels and get this shipment through. All right. We've got to get out of the game, get down there, bring our camera phones, and get video of this. So they go down, they sneak out of the game, go down, and are trying to capture video of this, and of course, they all get caught. Yeah. And you have them being set up, like the smugglers put them in handcuffs, throw them in there, except for Nancy, who's like kept out there so that the teacher can laugh at, ha ha ha, you thought you were going to be able to stop me, sort of thing. And set all of this up and big build and build and build. What's going to happen to Nancy Drew? What's going to happen to Nancy Drew? Big perilous moment of revealing, like, well, you came down to explore and try to find the tunnels, and you just fell off the cliff over here. It's really a tragedy, sort of thing.
You should have listened to your friends and just covered the basketball game.
And suddenly, and that is the point at which, with Nancy in this moment of peril that this is about to happen, you hear George.
Holding up her handcuffs that has been successfully picked.
Yes. You hear George being like, there he is! And the teacher turns around and goes, what? And George waves the handcuffs and goes, guess who was paying attention?
Well, I would also love where it's like, oh, no, he's the advisor for the newspaper.
And then as the teacher is like, well, it's just, like, do you really think that you can stop me too? And she's like, oh no, but I brought friends. And that's when the stage is stormed by the girls' basketball team and the cheerleading squad and the newspaper staff and all of these other, groups and everything. And they're all singing a reprise of the opening song. And this time the reprise is, we're just like all the other girls. You mess with one and your ass is grass.
All right. Let's get that on Broadway, people.
Yes.
You'll get that nice tween demographic for sure.
Fun, rollicking, adventurous, empowering. I think we've got a great thing there.
Super fun.
I want to see that version of Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
Girl power. Yes, exactly.
I'd watch that as a movie. I'd watch that as a musical. What do you think, Lola?
Watch this television series on Disney XD.
Lola says not enough kittens.
Yes. Lola always says there's not enough kittens. I tried showing Lola The Lion King. She said not enough kittens.
Well, very good. That was a lot of fun.
Yay!
I feel like you have a lot of, you really need to get set up with your recording studio and everything, because now you're just like, I want to make all these musicals for real. It's called The Basketball Diaries. Wait.
No.
High School Musical, The Absent-Minded Professor, and Nancy Drew.
Well, I like the idea for the title of this one. It's just a working title. But I like Nancy Drew and the Case of the Musical.
There you go.
Which, then I suppose people would complain that they came to see it. Nancy Drew solved a case about a musical, and the case had nothing to do with the musical. But it's a musical.
Well, I feel like the one thing that, if you got producers involved or whatever, they might just say, well, he's the music teacher,
Yeah.
They could really easily kind of change this around to make it more musical. Mm-hmm. Because, I have a lot of friends who went to school for music, and you do have to kind of, pick a specific time in history. It's not like you don't know history.
Right.
Or it's like that Sherlock Holmes where it's like the music box.
Yeah.
That's what he's smuggling. It's music boxes. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle.
Yes, music boxes. Music boxes from Russia that contain yellow-caked uranium.
Oh, that's super fun. I really hope that you guys enjoy that out there. I would love to see that.
All right. Any notes? Any ideas you want to throw out there?
No, I mean, honestly, I think that I grew up watching a lot of movies like that in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, heck, even in, college in, late 90s, early 2000s. You don't really see a lot of movies like that or a lot of appreciation for movies like that. We kind of were talking about the other day, we watched the new Charlie's Angels, and it's not, the best piece of cinema that you've ever seen, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And how many, male-led action things are just fun and silly and stupid. And it seems like there's always, these, big standards to be upheld where it's oh, it has to be meaningful or whatever. But I feel like you know, if I saw this as a TV show, or if I saw this as a musical, or if I saw this as a movie, I was like, I think it would just be fun.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's kind of the same way that, like, we talked about, like, Spice World and Josie and the Pussycats are fun.
Yeah.
There's not really a modern equivalent to that.
Yeah. If I can take just a moment to wax poetic about Charlie's Angels, because it was a remake that kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody was really expecting it. And a lot of people were kind of like, why is this thing even a thing now? But I was like, you know what? The Man from U.N.C.L.E. came out, what, 2-3 years before that? And was a huge hit with lots of people being like, oh, this is kind of just straightforward, fun action movie that we've been wanting. And my reaction when I watched Man from U.N.C.L.E. was I was like, I feel like it's subpar. Like, nothing wrong with all of the people involved with it. The actors gave it their best shot. The writer did a good job. Director did a good job. But for me, I was like, it didn't scratch the itch that I wanted scratched by an action movie. The new Charlie's Angels movie did. And still not, like you said, not the greatest work of cinematic art you've ever seen or anything like that.
That's fine.
But to me, it was everything people told me The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was going to be. And so I was very satisfied with the Charlie's Angels movie. I was very happy that they basically made every version of Charlie's Angels that's been on television or film canon to that one movie.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, there's been so many movies we've seen in recent years like that, where it's like, then they tease part 2, and the part 2 seems like it's going to be even better.
Yeah.
Because I think that they were going to say, like, one of the very original Charlie's Angels is going to be the villain in the next one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, you know, it is, I guess I am a sucker for girl power stories.
Yeah. We need them.
Yeah.
Until it actually happens, we keep needing them.
Yes. And I feel like, you know, as a male fan of girl power stories, I think the important thing on this one would be not trying to do it all on my own, but I would need collaborators who are women who appreciate Nancy Drew and the character.
Well, and I think the nicest thing about it, if I can be honest, from a high school community theater perspective, there are like 2 men in this.
Yeah.
And everybody else is a woman.
Yeah. Like,
that is the type of show that you need. That is, I mean, it might not run on Broadway for forever, but, you know, if it was produced as a package for high schools, or if it was produced for a package for community theater, there's always, like, so many women who are very talented and can have these, like, amazing, like, you know, character roles that I think having more shows like this would be, like, really great. And it all makes sense. It's not like you're just, you know, saying, well, I have to put all these women in because. It's like, no, this could really happen. It's a real story, and I think, like, you know, you would have a lot of fun if you're playing the head of the girls' basketball team, or Nancy, or George, or the head cheerleader, or the other girls on the paper.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it would just be really fun to finally see a show where, you know, 80% of the cast has to be women.
Yeah. Especially 80%, very big number in, like, gender disparity in theater. Because I believe the numbers fluctuate up and down, but generally speaking, what you have is around 80% of professional actors in live theater are women. 20% are men. 80% of roles in live theater, professional live theater, are men's roles. 20% of roles are women's. So that 80% number you just threw out is very important. And having a show that is, primarily women, primarily speaking roles for women, singing roles for women, I think is a great thing to throw out there to have for professional theater.
Like background and dancing roles for women. Like, I mean, how often can you think, aside from a Ziegfeld Follies, that there are going to be women with basketballs doing a dance? And even then, it would be like, woo! Woo! Like, you could actually kind of have, like, a really fun, athletic dance. You
could even flat out make it just 2 guys in the cast, maybe 3 if you wanted to have Nancy Drew's father as a character. By saying that Ned doesn't even go to the same school as Nancy. He goes to the boys' academy that's next door to her school.
Well, I don't mind that, but I mean, I think, like, of course you would have other background male dancers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, just it would flesh it out at the high school. But I think the named characters are the important part, where it's like, here are 15 named girl parts and 3 named male parts.
Yeah.
You know, that's just not very common.
Yeah.
Or, like I said, or a lot of people said, like, oh, it's not very believable, even though it happens all the time.
Yeah. You have Ned, Mr. Harris, and Mr. Drew. And then you have George, Nancy, Christy from the cheerleading squad, Samantha from the band, just 3 or 4 basketball players with names.
Yeah. And that's, like, that would be in the moments where it's like they're setting up, you know, they're all part of newspaper club, or when Nancy's going to go talk to different groups to get information or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or even scenes within the classroom.
Mm-hmm. So, Nancy Drew. I feel like, of course, I just did like a bare bones sort of pitch for what the story is. There's lots you would have to do, like, let's have a scene where the cheerleading squad comes in and helps Nancy out by causing a disruption in the history class so she can get away to do something or get something out of the teacher's desk, something like that. There's lots of other things you can fill in along the way on that story. But I feel like what I have there for a story is the beginning of something where if I could put this together and produce it, I would feel proud saying this is part of a franchise that I grew up loving. Yeah. So.
Yay! We did it.
Another one for the fanfic pile.
Alrighty. Well, now that we're coming kind of towards the end of the time, I did want to kind of talk about like the next book that I was thinking of adapting, because we're going to be doing another week of books. We had intended on pushing it back after next week, but kind of with the pandemic still going on, we're still looking at this week. So I really, the last autobiography I really loved, you know, this is kind of in the vein of Hamilton. Obviously, it's coming out on July 3rd on Disney+. It's going to be a big event. Everybody's very excited. But I wanted to think of, like, what other nonfiction kind of similar stories to that story of Hamilton that inspired Lin-Manuel Miranda to write that musical. What would I want to see? What would I want to do? And my pick, and I had to go look up the title because I don't remember the title, but I remember loving the book, because this was from 2016. Like, I haven't read this book in a long time, but it is one of the few political books I've got all the way through, and I've really been motivated to read and do more, is The Bully Pulpit, Theodore Roosevelt and the Golden Age of Journalism by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And I'm really excited about it. I have really kind of, like, loved that. I feel like my passion at the last turn of the century really came from, like, that's when my grandparents came to this country and, you know, kind of grew up in, and really have been able to kind of move from being, you know, blue-collar workers, immigrants, and we're able to watch America kind of grow to protect people, to protect safety, to protect environment, to build national parks, to do the WPA, to do all these, like, really amazing things that allowed them to have a foothold and, you know, be able to raise families on, you know, I would say, like, it's just so weird to us that it's, like, one salary to raise a family of 6, and it doesn't mean, like, they were living wealthily, but they had a car, they had a house, you know, they went on vacations every year, and the vacations might have been, like, well, we went to the state park, or, you know, we went to, like Erie or something, but it's, like, it was such a different time than I think what we have explored now. I think that a lot of things have kind of changed, you know, not so much for the good, but it's, like, I love kind of learning, well, how are these things done in, you know, 1912 instead of 2012? And, you know, what lessons can we kind of take away? And I think that kind of being stuck in a pandemic right now, and there was a pandemic at the last turn of the century, like, it is one of these things, like, we kind of have to, like, watch how history repeats. And one of kind of, like, the greatest things that I think was kind of established during this time was really the national parks. My parents lived near Sanibel, which is primarily preserved because of things that Theodore Roosevelt did. If there wasn't this move to preserve things like the Everglades and parts of Florida and parts of the American Southwest and stuff like that, we would not have these things here today. They would be hotels. They would be, you know, bought by mining operations. And I think that we are seeing some political things where it's moving in that direction, which is very distressing. But I like kind of seeing this attitude of folks that knew they had a lot of money and they had a privilege and a responsibility to do better for other people. Not just because, like, they didn't want to have, like, somebody rolling cigars next to where, like, babies' diapers were being changed because they wanted to smoke those cigars, but also, like, they wanted to be able to do something better for their fellow man, because if they have gotten this far in their life by being lucky, what could we do to make other people lucky as well? Like, can't we educate every child? Can't we feed every child? And I think that that's really something that I have kind of gone through with life. Nobody's a complete saint or anything like that, but I think that there are a lot of things here that no matter how they've gotten at them, kind of like making sure that we have reliable media and respectable journalists, making sure that we have a monopoly bust, make sure that we have people being protected first, and seeing as every potential, child in America as the person who can save our world. And I like that. And I think that this kind of goes through a lot of that. And they talk about the good things, the bad things, but they really go through, a large chunk of our American history that would just totally be different if this wasn't focused on. So I'm really excited to kind of share that and hopefully kind of create, probably not the next Hamilton, but highlight a piece of history and a story that I think that is really important. It would be kind of cool to be a next musical, because we don't have a whole heck of a lot of, like, American musicals. We have Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, we have 1776, we have Hamilton. I'm sure there's some more out there, but I don't think that this is a part of history that has been explored. Mm-hmm. We have had, like, smaller things like Fiorello and stuff like that, but I think it might be fun to see, Teddy Roosevelt as a musical hero.
Well, excellent. I'm looking forward to that.
Bye, Jenny.
Jenny, bye, Jenny. Lovely seeing you again. Thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think that's going to be a great pitch. And I think we should probably wrap up and we should get off of the stream. But before we go, can I give you a little piece of trivia that I found out while I was researching Nancy Drew for this?
Yeah.
All right. So Stratemeyer, the guy who actually created the character of Nancy Drew and then handed it off to Mildred, I forget the last name that started with an M as well, who was the original Carolyn King. Stratemeyer, when he pitched Nancy Drew to the publishers, Hardy Boys were already a popular series for them that he had also created. He pitched them this high school girl reporter who's also like a tough-as-nails detective. Mm-hmm. The original name for Nancy Drew in all of his notes was Stella Strong.
Hey, so that's great.
It was originally going to be Stella Strong Mysteries, and the publisher said, you have another name than Stella Strong. And he said, Stella Stalwart, Drew Dare, or Daring Drew, or Nan Drew. And the publisher apparently was the one who was like, I like Nan Drew. Can we make it Nancy? And Stratemeyer was like, absolutely, whatever you want. So that was a little piece of trivia that I just loved, from Stella Strong through Dare Drew, or Drew Dare, to Nancy Drew.
Well, you got me thinking about Susan Strong from Adventure Time now.
Yes. All right, everyone. So thank you very much for tuning in. It was lovely seeing you. Jenny, I know you've already had to run, but it was lovely seeing you in the chat. And we are going to go.
Yes.
And Bri is
I'm
going
to go take a nap. I'm tired.
She's going to take a nap, and then she's going to get straight to brainstorming her ideas for the Teddy Roosevelt musical.
Yeah. Can't do anything without a nap at first.
All right. So wear your mask, social distancing, all of that fun stuff. And until next time, take care of yourself, because you know that we're not there to take care of you.
Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.